Hello, class. I thought I would answer or respond to some of the questions that you have answered in the weekly postings by offering my own view and kind of responding to some of yours. As far as the workplace, the changing workplace affecting us, I think it can't help but do so. I think it also depends on the age that one is. If you're of a certain age, you may be used to only working with a certain type of group or a certain type of person. And if you're a younger person, you may be much more used to working with diverse groups of people. So there is that generational aspect to it. I think mainly majority workers tend to, or I shouldn't say tend to, but may think of the emergence of both women and other minorities into the workplace as an intrusion sometimes, but that's just kind of the natural order of the way things that have progressed, or the way things have progressed. Both the fact that feminism contributed to women's insistence on education and equal opportunity in the workplace, the financial situations of the past few decades have kind of mandated that we have a dual income family. And in many cases, many couples, be they gay or straight, have no choice but for both people to work. The effects of diversity on the global community have, I think, been wide and varied and can be both positive and negative. In a sense, we are a smaller world than we were when I grew up in the 1950s. And we have come to be exposed to many different kinds of people that we wouldn't have. I know Sharon had commented as far as the stereotype question about being Italian, and that there being lots of stereotypes about people who are of our descent, and there are, none of which are helped by the events of the past week, in which 120 people were arrested in New York City who were related to mob activities and all parts of the major crime families, and all of them, I think, as far as I could see, to a T, had Italian last names. They all ended with a vowel. I cannot tell you how many people have assumed that because I was Italian that I had relatives or knew of people in the mafia, neither of which I did, actually. I also noticed that there was a remark about being a hairdresser, which I also used to be. And there are stereotypes about that. Being that I was an adult learner, that was what I did for much of the time while I went to school to support myself and my family. So there are lots of different issues surrounding all of those areas. Are the effects positive, negative, or mixture? I'd say they're definitely a mixture. Being that we are a global economy and that news spreads so quickly, I don't think any of us are immune to the effects of what happened on 9/11. Can have a certain queasiness when we're in an airport or on an airplane with people who might look like they're of Muslim descent. Certainly, most people who are of that faith are peaceful people. It just so happens that the number of people who were radicalized and who attacked our country that day were of that faith and had certain physical characteristics that resembled one another. Your own view of cultural competence or cultural diversity, I think depends on your experiences. In the psychological profession, cultural competence means that we need to, before servicing a client from a culture that is very much different than ours, do as much as we can to find out about that culture, and if we don't feel comfortable, to refer that client to somebody else. Because cultural competence, as it's known, is extremely important, and that we can't assume, especially when people are in such a intimate situation as therapy, that you know everything about them or that their reactions are going to be the same as yours. So gaining cultural knowledge can only benefit all of us. We all hold stereotypes about diverse populations. Again, getting back to Sharon's, she shares a similar background to me. Those of you who are African American, there certainly were in both media and just in popular culture notions of African Americans, Polish people, German people, Irish people, all kinds of ethnic groups and races, Hispanics being mostly blue-collar workers. I think President Obama has gone a long way in not just appointing 2 women to the Supreme Court, but one of them being a Latina. It goes to show that not all people from all ethnic groups are what we always think they are. I think we get somewhat of a jaundiced kind of picture here in Western New York too. My son lives in Los Angeles, and it is much more common to see middle and upper middle class people of mainly Mexican descent there than it would be here. Much of our experience in Western New York is with Hispanic people as migrant workers, as farm workers, or as the occupations in the lower middle classes. It certainly isn't true all over the country, and it certainly isn't true for that population as a whole. As far as stereotypes held about the group that you belong to, I think we've all been victim of it. As I've mentioned, I have been victim of too, both being Italian and at one point in my life being a hairdresser, and people making assumptions about both of those things, none of which were true. However, as I said before, I think I mentioned before, stereotypes are what are known as cognitive shortcuts. They give us kind of a snap way of judging people without investing too much psychological or emotional energy. They're not accurate. We have reason and rationality in order to fight them, but they can often win out over our reason and our rationality, especially when we're making snap judgments. So stereotypes are something that exist, that we all are prone to have, and that by virtue of the fact that we are thinking people can counteract by making a conscious effort to do so. The way people view the world certainly does affect how they view other people and their relationships. It has an effect on how much we trust other people, how much we let other people who are different from us into our lives, even our intimate relationships. Worldviews can range from largely the American view, where we are absolutely free in most cases to choose who it is we want to be partnered with, to other countries that we would refer to as more traditional, where marriages and relationships are arranged and people have no choice whatsoever. Those would have to create a vastly different view of what the world is like, whether it's friendly to you or not, whether it's hostile or not. So all of these things come into play when we're talking about diversity, when we're talking about worldviews, and when we're talking about stereotypes. So I look forward to discussing this more when I meet all of you at the residency. Thanks.